Okay, of course, we got to talk more Aaron Rodgers. We got some Aaron Rodgers updates regarding his timeline, when he's potentially going to make a decision. Steelers made some additional signings today, brought back a couple receivers, and we also brought back a quarterback, a familiar name, familiar face, in Mason Rudolph. First, we got to start with Aaron Rodgers, though, because this is obviously the big story that Steeler fans and Steeler Nation, the Steelers media, is keeping in touch with. Jerry Dulac had a few things to say about what's going on behind the scenes in terms of money. Like, what is the actual holdup here? What is on Aaron Rodgers' mind as it relates to what teams that he wants to, or between the two teams, the Giants and the Steelers, what factors are weighing a little bit heavier than the others? And he says that money's not really an issue. The delay in the Aaron Rodgers discussion with the Steelers is not about money. The offer has been made. It's about Rodgers taking his good old time about making a decision. Can I actually have a defense for Aaron Rodgers here? I'm glad we got the clarification, though, that the Rodgers holdup, the Rodgers taking of his time doesn't have much to do with money. It's more about fit and maybe even whether or not he wants to play football going forward. And that's why I'm gonna kind of defend Aaron Rodgers here, because this is a big decision. This is a very big decision in terms of him, his legacy, and just everything he's accomplished up to this point. Like, he doesn't have to play football anymore if he doesn't want to. I mean, I think that's probably the big thing. Do you want to play football? Because we haven't heard from him. We are assuming he took that meeting with the Jets. He flew cross country to go meet with the Jets, that he wants to still play. And a lot of the reports that were out there were saying that he wanted to play for the Jets. But ever since the Jets told him that they were going to release him, we haven't heard about whether or not he still wants to play in the league on another team. If he wants to go to a whole nother situation and kind of restart, we haven't heard that from him, or haven't really heard reports from people that are close to him or anything like that about just whether or not he wants to play. I think everyone's speculating because of the trip that he took over to New York cross country, and it seemed like he still wanted to play with the Jets. Apparently he talked to them as to try to convince them as to why he should be back and why he was the right answer for them. But ever since they released him, we really haven't heard anything concrete, or I don't think we have any necessarily good information on if Aaron Rodgers necessarily wants to play in general. If he's set on that, I'll put it to you this way: if he's set on that, obviously he's intrigued. He's looking at offers. He said on that one video from TMZ, someone ran up on him at the gym and said, what are you looking for out of your next team? And he said, if they want me and if they're a good team. Still never mentioned anything if he was dead set on going to a whole new situation and restarting. So that's why I'm going to defend Aaron Rodgers a little bit here. It's like, this is a big decision for him. He doesn't necessarily have to play football. He could retire right now and he's stamped Hall of Fame certified, one of the greats to do it at the quarterback position. Like, there's no doubt. 4-time MVP, won a Super Bowl. Unfortunately, it was against us. Super Bowl MVP. Like, he's one of those guys, man. He's one of those handful of guys when you're talking about the all-time great quarterbacks, you're bringing him up in those discussions. If he retires right now. Didn't have the best ending with the Jets, but not everyone always has. Actually, more all-timers, more Hall of Famers have poor endings than great endings. Like, not everyone can be John Elway. Not everyone can be Big Ben and retire in one jersey with one team. You know what I mean? Like, it typically doesn't work that way. Whenever you're talking about just football careers in general, but even with the greats, sometimes the endings aren't that great. The endings aren't perfect, right? So he could retire like that. But I mean, he could also try to reinvigorate his career. He could try to resuscitate his career and go to a team like the Steelers, go to the Giants. Obviously, I think the Steelers are a better fit for doing that. But I think that's what's going on in his mind right now. I'm seeing some stuff that if he does want to play, he might be looking for a 2-year deal. But who really knows? I think that's where we're at. I mean, I think Rodgers is the only one that knows, and not too many people have contact with him like that, or able to get good information out of him like that. And I think the people that are close to him, they're not just throwing it out there willy nilly. But anyway, another reason, like, kind of just with the timeline and everything. One, it's a big decision here, and why I'm going to defend Aaron Rodgers on this. Big decision. I think that's clearly established, right? What team would you want to play for between Steelers Giants if you still want to play? Like, I think he's weighing all that stuff. But free agency just started yesterday, technically, right? The whole signing period just started yesterday. The tampering period started Monday. Like, it's not like this situation was known to him about what teams would be seriously interested, like weeks ago, like months ago, where he's really had time to ruminate on it. Steelers being a player kind of just it kind of just popped up on Monday. I mean, I guess we could be naive and say that it popped up Monday. Maybe there was an idea that the Steelers would be looking at Aaron Rodgers a few days before that, but all the reports were saying Justin Fields was the Steelers' first option, right? It was going to be between Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. They're going to be looking at an in-house quarterback. So the Steelers just kind of popped up recently. Giants, kind of similar too. It hasn't been more than a week that the Giants have been talked about with Aaron Rodgers like that. Because I think everyone assumed that the Giants were going to just go quarterback in the draft, maybe trade up or sit at 3, take one of these guys in the top 3. So so a lot of information, a lot of new stuff is coming out there kind of fast, and now it's on our timeline. I think fans' timeline, media timeline, we want decisions like that. But for a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who again doesn't have to do anything really, his legacy, his career is stamped. It's not the worst idea to spend an extra day or two to really think about this. And like I said, the free agency signing period literally just happened yesterday, and Aaron Rodgers is in a position of power in this. And the Steelers kind of put themselves in this boat here. We can't be. I don't think we should be ripping on Aaron Rodgers for taking a few extra days with this situation. It's not his fault that the Steelers need a quarterback, that they need Aaron Rodgers. Same thing with the Giants. Rodgers has some leverage. Rodgers has some power in this. And with who he is, Aaron Rodgers, I think he can. He has the cachet. He has the ability to take his time if he wants. And I keep comparing this situation to Tom Brady's. I look back. Where else are you getting this information from? Only from me. So I did some research going back on 2020 whenever Brady went from New England to the Buccaneers in that whole offseason. The timeline was this. Tampering period started March 16th. So it was like a week later than what it is right now. Tampering period started March 16th. Brady made the decision that he wasn't returning to New England the next day, Tuesday, 17th. Signing period started March 18th. He made his decision to sign with the Buccaneers March 20th. So and Brady, again, the reason I bring up Brady, similar caliber player, you know what I mean? All-time player, all-time quarterbacks, Brady, Rodgers, right? Brady signed March 20th. The signing period was the 18th. So if Rodgers makes his decision today, that's actually sooner than when Tom Brady made his decision, right? If Rodgers makes his decision tomorrow, it's the same day that Brady made his decision. And I don't think anyone was complaining about Brady taking too much time. Like, who knows? Now, I'll say this about Rodgers. I don't know if he gets the benefit of the doubt with this type of stuff, with how he handled some Packers off seasons. Not going to front. He dragged some of those things out. But again, we don't know when he, if he makes it today, he makes it tomorrow, then yeah, it's actually very much within a timely fashion, I'd say, all things considering. So I'm going to defend a little like Rodgers here a little bit. Now, if we get a week down the line, 2 weeks down the line, that's a whole different story. But again, the Steelers put themselves in this situation to be waiting on Rodgers. Now, they made a pivot today, or they kind of got something in their back pocket by signing Mason Rudolph, which I think was a really good move for multiple reasons. I think Mason's a really good backup. But if Rodgers doesn't sign, he's got some starters potential. We got to see him at the end of the 2023 season light it up. Those last 3 games in the regular season, I was playing like a top 10 quarterback. And then even that wild card game, didn't think he played bad. Had a poor pick in the red zone, but got us within 1 score in the second half on the road against the Bills with a very injury-plagued defense. I thought he played good. Pickens had a fumble in the first half. That was the weird part about that game. Going in, we were very much adverse to turning the ball over on offense. Like we had no turnovers the last like 3-4 weeks of the season. And we thought that was going to be a big way for us to come out of there with a dub. Is like, all right, if we just keep playing like we are, we got the run game going. Mason's throwing these deep shots, completing at a high clip with Pickens. He's throwing some he's throwing it deep, and he's adding some pop to this offense. He's adding some explosiveness to this offense, and he's not turning the ball over. There's been no turnovers. So we can just keep doing that, and the defense hang on. Hopefully Josh Allen turns the ball over once or twice. We get out of there with a win, but it was like the opposite. That was the weird part about that game. But again, I think he and the team played admirably to get it within 1 score, second half in the fourth quarter, and make it a close game. But yeah, I think Rodgers, he is on his timeline, and I honestly don't blame him. Like if any of us were in his shoes, why does he have to make this snap decision right away? As soon as free agency, the tampering period starts, the signing period starts. I mean, he could chill for a little bit, man. And that's the other thing. Does he want to do the whole restart with a whole new team? It seems like it. It seems like it, but I'm sure that's something he's contemplating too. I'm sure first he wants to make sure he's all in, wants to do this for another season or two with a new team, whole new organization, all that, and then pick the team. What's best? Now, I think that's a no-brainer. Go with the Steelers. But we got our backup plan. We got Mason, man. Like, that's the other thing. Right? Rodgers can take his time. Now we got Mason. I can't believe I'm saying that. Who would have thought 2-3 years ago we'd be talking about the Steelers potentially signing Aaron Rodgers, and we have Mason still on our roster. And I'm saying, all right, Rodgers, take your time, whatever. If you don't sign, we're good. We'll still be good. We'll figure it out. Even though trust me, don't get me wrong. I want us to sign Aaron Rodgers. We still should be all in and trying to get Aaron Rodgers here. We should. But I'm just saying, Rodgers is in a position of power right now. And like Steelers kind of put themselves in that spot by not signing Fields, not signing Darnold, not giving them very competitive offers. It is what it is. It is what it is. So another thing with Rodgers, though, we do got a current player, a newly signed player on the Steelers, former teammate of Aaron Rodgers, that's low-key trying to get Rodgers here. That wouldn't be opposed to Rodgers staying his teammate, because new Steelers corner Brandon Echols was asked about Rodgers, because obviously the talks are that Steelers are potentially going to sign him and Echols is going to be his teammate again. So, yeah, some of the reporters today in Echols' introductory press conference asked him about Rodgers and what's that dynamic. He said, it was cool. When he first got there, I couldn't really feel him out, but after a while, we gravitated towards each other. He also said that Rodgers really made him a better player, and playing with Aaron Rodgers was cool. Like, it was a good experience. And then, as you can see with the last line here, asked if he'll try to recruit him to sign with the Steelers. He says, hell yeah. So there you go. Like, we hear all these stories. We hear a bunch of stuff from the media, how Rodgers is this terrible teammate. But why don't we hear from his teammates that he's a major problem in the locker room and that, he's this cancer or anything like that? Why don't we hear it from them? In fact, a ton of the Jets players were bummed that New York didn't bring him back. You saw a bunch of tweets from some of the big name guys, some of the leaders on the team, like Quentin Williams, like, man, sucks. We're not going to have Rodgers. So, yeah, I don't know, man. Like, outside of really, in terms of stuff we know for a fact, outside of him, in a way, throwing Mike Williams under the bus on that red line pass last year on one of those primetime games in the middle of the season. Outside of that, when has Rodgers been this awful teammate or this toxic teammate to the players that he's playing with, like in the locker room and that type of setting, that type of environment? We haven't really heard that. Like, look back with the Packers. Have we heard that from players that Rodgers have played with? I don't think. Jordan Love. Rodgers had every opportunity to kind of do the Brett Favre approach and what Favre did to him and not be a mentor, not be a guy that's very friendly. Every opportunity. Jordan Love gets drafted, and obviously he's there to take Rodgers' job. It was the opposite. Like, Jordan Love has nothing but good things to say about Aaron Rodgers. So I know people blow some stuff out of proportion with Rodgers. Obviously, huge talent. Again, one of the all-timers. And he's got his own way of doing things. But in terms of being a good teammate, I don't know. I haven't heard really anything bad about him. Outside, I guess we got the media speculation and what we see from afar and how he handled his relationship and dynamic with the Packers organization. Maybe people take that and portray it onto him being a teammate. Because, yeah, I mean, there's stuff that you could bring up about that for sure. How he interacted with the Packers organization, coaching, and all that stuff throughout the years. But as a teammate, I don't know. It seems like a lot of people are in his corner. Because even last year, again, as a teammate, what have you really heard bad about Aaron Rodgers? Now, the coaching staff got fired, Saleh, all this. We assume it's Rodgers making power plays by firing Saleh and Hackett and all, like the whole coaching staff with the turnover that took place in the middle of the season. We assume it was Aaron Rodgers. Do we know that for a fact? That's the Jets organization you're dealing with there. Jets organization, have this track record of being competent and making right and prudent decisions? No, not necessarily. Rodgers said it wasn't him. In fact, Saleh was one of the big reasons that he went to the Jets. So I don't know. We don't know any. All I'm saying, I guess, is we don't know anything for a fact. A lot of it's just speculation, but it does seem like teammates, players that play with Rodgers don't really have a bad thing to say about him. They don't. And in fact, we got a guy that was with Rodgers these last 2 years, Brandon Echols, joins a new team in the Steelers. Obviously hears that Rodgers is interested. There's mutual interest between Rodgers and the Steelers about that potentially becoming a thing. And he says, hell yeah, I'll rock with him. And if you listen to the interview, like, he's smiling and he's pretty jovial when talking about Rodgers. He's not like faking it for the cameras or anything. Like, you could detect that type of stuff. Anything else with Rodgers before we move on? We'll talked a little bit Mason there. There is some more we could discuss with Mason. Obviously, the signings that happened. Do I want to talk any more with Rodgers? No, I think that's cool. All right, let's just do this real quick. DK Metcalf. He's going to be rocking number 4. This made sense from the start. As soon as he signed here, I know a lot of people were like, oh, who's going to wear 14? DK's number, his whole career has been 14. Pickens' number is 14. I think 4 made sense from the jump. Typically, Steelers don't allow, at least since it became a new rule, they didn't really want to allow single-digit jersey numbers to non-traditional positions. I think it became a new league rule over the last, like, what was it, like 2-3 years ago? And Steelers initially for that first season or so were like, no, we're not doing that. But then we signed Patrick Queen, and then all changed. He became number 6. So since it's open to some of the bigger name guys, to guys with more cachet, a single digit always made sense for DK. And then obviously his old number was 14. Just take the 1 off. He gets 4. Like, the only other way this could have worked, I think, is if Pickens finally got his wish of being number 1, and then DK just could have been 14. But that wasn't happening because Gary Anderson, one of the Steelers' all-time kickers, has that unofficially retired. So I don't think that was going to happen. This one made sense. Made a ton of sense. DK with 4. completely go with it. Now let's get to these signings the Steelers made. 2 receivers are back. Ben Skoranek and Scotty Miller. With the Rappaport tweet you can see here, Steelers are re-signing Ben Skoranek, source says, and he's back with Pittsburgh after playing for them in 2024. And then the Adam Schefter tweet, it is the second line with the football. Steelers are re-signing Scotty Miller to a 1-year deal. So now our receiver room is DK, Pickens, Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller, Ben Skoranek. So we got 6. Does that stop us from still signing a receiver? I still think we should look into drafting a receiver. Because that 6 is solid, especially with Skoranek, Scotty Miller, and what they could give you on special teams. Obviously, Calvin Austin does the punt returning for us. But one more guy, I would throw one more guy in the mix to compete with Skoranek and Scotty Miller for those last 2 spots. See if anyone could give you special teams to a similar degree as those 2 guys, but potentially could be a better receiver. Because we know from a receiver standpoint, Scotty Miller, Skoranek, you're kind of capped from like an upside and what they're going to ultimately give you. So if you could get a guy in the draft, maybe it's a 4th round pick, 5th round pick, who could come in, show you that maybe they could be more part of the future from a receiving standpoint, but also give you special teams, that could bump or knock one of these guys off the roster, Skoranek or Scotty Miller. Because these are good signings. There's nothing wrong with them. I liked Skoranek whenever he got time. Actually, I'm more excited about the Skoranek one than the Scotty Miller, because Skoranek was a stud in special teams last year for us as a gunner. And then it felt like he was doing a ton of dirty work on offense. And maybe unfortunately he was out, like in my opinion, he might have been out there too much. But whenever he was out there, he was blocking, he was doing dirty work. If you threw him a pass on 3rd down, he would deliver for you. It seemed like the same thing with Scotty Miller. I don't remember Scotty Miller dropping a pass for us on offense, but I don't think he gives us necessarily the same special teams dynamic as Ben Skoranek. But they're capped on offense. Like they're not, I don't expect them getting more than 100 or 200 yards for you. But they're going to be wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6. So you're not expecting much from them anyway. I'm just saying, I don't think these signings guarantee them roster spots. I still think I would look to draft another guy, see if someone has more upside, 5th or 6th round, give you the special teams. But we know what Scotty Miller and Ben Skoranek are going to give us. Nothing to sneeze at because of the special teams and because of some of the blocking like a Ben Skoranek gave you last year and just the sure hands, the reliability. I think they've found their niche is that wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, special teams guy. But if there is something out there that could maybe give you more down the line or give you a little bit more ceiling, yeah, look into that. That's all I'm saying. D-Max is saying Skoranek is a Hines Ward type of blocker. Yeah, he's good, man. I'm not going to go that far. Hines Ward was a GOAT. But Skoranek is very well in the block. I think he's very good at it. This is why I'm complaining about him being out there as much as he was last year, even though he was doing the blocking and it's just kind of hurts your dynamic on offense where you feel like it's going to be a run. I don't think he gives you too much in the passing game. When he's out there, it's a tell that this is probably going to be a running play. You need guys like a DK Metcalf, honestly, a guy that is willing to block, but he's going to be a threat in the passing game literally every time the ball is snapped. Those are the type of dudes you want out there on a frequent basis. And which is why we traded for DK Metcalf. You have a DK Metcalf and a Pickens as your top 2. They should be out there at least 85, 90% of the time. Like the defense doesn't necessarily know what you're going to do. There's no tell. I felt like there was a tell when you'd have Van Jefferson, you'd have Skoranek out there, you'd have some of these less explosive guys. Yeah, this is one. We don't got to worry about them blowing past our defense, but so we could cheat up, and then it most likely is going to be a run anyway. So that's why I'm happy we moved off of them, and we also moved off of Najee because I thought it was similar with Najee. You knew what we were probably running it 70-80% of the time, and Najee wasn't too much of a threat in the passing game either, like a Jalen Warren. So that is it, man. That's all I got for today's show. Let me read a couple more of these comments before I get out of here. We got D-Max saying, what D-line guy is left we can sign? Or O-line. Maybe Becton or McCormick can move back to left guard and replace Isaac next year when injured again. I like the Mekhi Becton call. I don't know how much it would cost to get him, but I wouldn't mind that, just bringing on an extra guard, and then McCormick could be a backup for next year. Learn another season behind a Sayamalu and a Becton. Not opposed to. I think that's a decent strategy because Sayamalu, you're right. He's probably got like one more year left in him, and then we're going to be moving on. And McCormick's ready this year, but it wouldn't be the worst thing if he had to sit for another season because James Daniel was nice for us last year. In a perfect world last year, McCormick doesn't get any time. Daniels is starting the whole season, and then maybe we're even re-signing Daniels. He ended up going to the Dolphins. But McCormick, given he was a fourth rounder, and he's only coming off of his rookie season going into his second year, wouldn't be the worst thing to sit behind a Becton and a Sayamalu. If we really wanted to get if we bring in Aaron Rodgers, we really want to try to get everything buttoned up, Becton wouldn't be bad. Yeah, the problem is I don't know what else is out there for tackle if we wanted to try to shore things up and give competition to Broderick. And then same thing with the D-line. I think we whiffed on the D-line. There's like no more notable names out there that I'm feeling great about. Hell, Ogunjobi, he's going up to the Bills. Guy that we just cut. We're going to have to draft D-line in the draft, like early. I think that's what it's going to come down to. I'd have to look. I did do some brief research yesterday about what the D-line room was looking like in free agency, but there was nothing that I was too excited about. Hargrave's gone. Milton Williams gone. There was who else? From the Commanders, they released him. I forget his name. Jonathan Allen. That would have been a nice pickup. He goes to the Vikings. Vikings loaded up on defense, man. They really loaded up. Credit to them for that. But I get what you're saying here. And then D-Max also is talking about Rodgers here. Says media wants everything to be a Real Housewives episode and blows it all off context. Now, I will admit, Rodgers sometimes brings it on him. He's going on McAfee every day or every week. He brings some of it on himself, no doubt about it. But again, in terms of just being a teammate, I really haven't heard much about him being a bad teammate, being a bad locker room guy, being a cancer like in the locker room. In terms of making it about himself outside of that, having tension between him and the organization, dragging stuff out like that's a different story. That's a completely different story. Brett Favre did that though too, right? at the end. So that's about it. Back next week, 6 p.m. Hopefully we got a quarterback. 6 p.m. on Tuesday. Hopefully Rodgers. If not, I mean, you heard my take. You hear my tone and voice. We can rock with Mason. Trade for Joe Milton. Have Mason in here. Draft a quarterback in the first round. Have them compete. I think we can make it work. We'll figure it out. We'll definitely figure it out. But that's it. Here we go, Steelers. Enjoy the weekend. Stay safe out there. Peace.